They moved under the cloak of darkness, believing the silence would shield their betrayal. In a world of shadows and secrets, a plan was born not in the streets of Ouagadougou, but in elite rooms where power plays like chess. These weren't ordinary men, they were wolves in suits and uniforms, shaking hands with devils behind closed doors. And their target, the one man shaking the pillars of neocolonial control, Captain Ibrahim Traoré. They called him dangerous. Not because he burned cities, but because he awakened minds. His presence threatened the comfort of those who ruled Africa without chains, using puppets, dollars, and documents. Traoré was not just a soldier, he was a symbol, raw, unfiltered defiance wrapped in discipline. The kind of defiance that makes foreign powers sweat in air-conditioned offices. They said the West couldn't control him. That he was speaking with Mali, Niger, Guinea, building a new alliance, not for profit, but for power. African power. So they moved quickly, whispering into the ears of his own people, promising rank, money, and a return to order, the old, broken order where Africa kneels quietly. It wasn't a coup. It was an execution plan. Precision-timed, government-backed, and masked as security protocol. Every step was rehearsed. Maps drawn. Schedules tracked. Communications intercepted. They studied his routine like he was prey, watching when he slept, who he met, how he moved. They knew the windows. They knew the doors. But they didn't know the man. On the night of the operation, the moon looked down in silence as a convoy of unmarked military vehicles slithered through the empty roads. No headlights. No insignias. Just steel, silence, and the stench of betrayal. Soldiers handpicked for loyalty not to the nation, but to the paycheck, sat with fingers near triggers, hearts numbed by promises of promotion. Inside the command vehicle, a general whose name history will erase whispered into a radio, "Confirm green light." The voice on the other side was cold, foreign, and smiling. "Proceed. Make sure there's no noise. We don't want a martyr." That was their mistake. They thought Traoré could be removed like a corrupt official, silently and surgically. They didn't understand that he wasn't held in place by position, but by the will of the people. A man who turned down exile. A man who walked among his people without armor. A man who refused foreign security offers, saying, "If I must die, it will be among my own." Yet here they were storming his compound with silencers and satellite backup, thinking guns could silence a revolution. Thinking a title was what gave Traoré power. Thinking he slept while his enemies plotted. But the air in that compound was already charged. The guards weren't just guards. They were believers. Every hallway had eyes. Every corridor was a battlefield in waiting. And as boots hit the ground, something shifted. The silence wasn't just quiet. It was listening. The gates were breached, but no resistance came. They moved room to room, finding only emptiness. Beds made. Lights off. Computers cold. A whisper ran through their ranks, "Where is he?" They searched like hunters in the dark, not knowing they were already the hunted. Across the city, strange things happened. Phone lines jammed. Radios flickered. Military checkpoints were suddenly abandoned. In the barracks, soldiers who were briefed to stand down refused orders. One lieutenant even pulled his pistol on his own superior and said, "I serve the people. Not traitors." But back at the compound, chaos was blooming. The operation leaders started to panic. Their maps were useless. Their intel wrong. Their men nervous. And at the center of it all, one question burned like fire in their veins: Where is Captain Ibrahim Traoré? They didn't know that Traoré had known for weeks. He had seen the signs. He had watched the sudden foreign visits, the secret meetings. He had intercepted the calls that weren't meant for his ears. He played their game better than they did. And as they advanced on an empty compound, he was already ahead, watching, listening, moving pieces on his own board. This was not a failed arrest. It was a trap in reverse. Because while they focused on taking him out, they exposed themselves. Every whisper, every code, every name they were logged. Every unit they mobilized tracked. The very radios they used to coordinate were now pinging his private intelligence network. You see, you can't arrest a man who is the movement. You can't arrest an idea whose time has come. And you can't arrest a storm that's already in the wind. Those who planned it didn't expect resistance. They didn't expect counter-surveillance. They didn't expect loyalty deeper than fear. But most of all, they didn't expect that their trap would be the match that ignited the fire of retribution. By the time they realized the mission had collapsed, it was already too late. This wasn't just a failure. This was a declaration of war. And every man involved, from the shadowy diplomats to the generals in polished boots, had now painted a target on their own backs. The operation ended with no shots fired. No arrests made. But the real explosion hadn't even started yet. Because now, the lion was no longer just roaring. He was hunting.